Here we are. Hello, everyone. Welcome to February. It's actually quite difficult to believe. The first one was last month at this point. I know February's shorter, but I think we're all happy to see the back of January. Spring is springing. We've got flowers everywhere. It's Baltically cold in Manchester, so it's all the same for me. But today, as it is titled, we've got some whiskies for you from Annandale and from the Cotswolds distillery. Get that word out, distillery. Quite a lot of things in common between the two of them. And we're going to talk about that a fair bit as we kind of roll through this. It's nice to have, not necessarily contrasting, but distilleries which have some shared features, distilleries that have been about for a similar amount of time, but distilleries which are making their own way and doing different adventures and all that kind of thing. Still waiting for a couple of people to comment or say that they're here. Here we go. I've got you all, guys. Good evening, everyone. I was on the wrong tab there. Peter, Simon, Liz, Peter again, and Conan. Hello, everyone. Hopefully some more people will join as we get on. Hopefully all the whiskies in your glass. We will be starting with the Annandale product. I actually have them this week. These little, wonderful little pouches. But yeah, let's crack on and get on with this. Let's get you guys some facts, some figures, and some fun stories as we roll on with this whiskey. Sorry about that. That might happen a lot. So I believe we've got John waiting to one side to come and greet us with all of his Annandale knowledge.
Hello, everyone.
And there he is indeed, the man himself. How you doing, John?
I'm not too bad. Not too bad. How are you doing?
Oh, good to hear. I was just telling people before that trying to get home from Manchester at the minute it's like trying to do like the Temple of Doom in Indiana Jones. It's like things coming out of nowhere and chaos. So I managed to get here just in time for this, which I was quite happy about. Hopefully your evening's been slightly less stressful, which would be nice to hear.
Yeah, it's about half-hour drive from the distillery to home, so it's quite an easy one for me.
Significantly more pleasant. But I will say, John, this is actually my first experience of Annandale as a whiskey. I've heard a lot about it, obviously. As a company, the Whiskey Shop recently started to stock it in the last, probably like I think just before Christmas or sort of in that sort of late winter period.
Just in before Christmas, but I think it was first on the shelves literally start of January. So
yeah, very much that case. We were getting quite a lot of requests for it beforehand, which is always a wonderful thing to hear. But I'll just roll off a couple of interesting facts and figures that I've done some research on you guys today, and we can kind of pick up on different things. Obviously, we'll talk about the whiskey. Hopefully, everyone has it in their glass. So, founded in 2014, you guys producing about 500,000 litres of whiskey a year, give or take. Obviously, the odd little experiment. Two sort of key lines. We've got Manor Words, which I believe is what we have here, an unpeated style. And then Manor Swords, which is the heavily peated style, coming in around sort of 45 ppm, if my figures are correct, hopefully. Give or take.
Yeah. A little bit of variance with seasonality, but about 45.
Of course. Yeah. And then for those of you that are in the comments, the story of this distillery and like how far it goes back is like quite incredible. I was blissfully unaware of the history this distillery has. So Annandale in its current state was founded essentially in like 2010 by Professor David Thomas and his wife, Teresa. And they've kind of brought everything back online. June 2011, I think they got consent from local government to kind of get it all up and running again. But prior to this, and this was something I knew nothing about, from 1836 to 1895, the original Annandale distillery was owned and operated by Johnny Walker for all of their purposes and needs, closed just as World War I ended. And then between 1924 and 2007, the Robinson family ran it, who are like an oak producer for porridge and all that kind of thing. Knew nothing about any of that. That was like an incredible little thing to dive through today and work. So that's, without even talking about the whiskey that's in the glass, that's already so much stuff to talk about. But if you want to guide us through what we have here, John, because I think a couple of people have already mentioned it's particularly oily. Someone in the comments, Conan, has tried a 5-year-old Oloroso cask with whiskey me 3 years ago. It was lovely, as is this one.
That's good to hear. Sorry to cut you off there. So Manor Words, so unpeated. It's a fresh fill bourbon cask. So back in 2020, this cask was down. So you're looking probably going to be a Heaven Hills cask. So it's nice, Kentucky proper good bourbon. Fantastic on the nose. I think it's 52.5%. So one of those strange casks for us. It was a liter cask. So just the volume that was needed for you guys and sort of going through our cask list, sort of went, that one matches almost perfectly. So there's a slight little bit extra that we've managed to sort of keep behind for prosperity, but you've pretty much got the full cask. So you won't find this anywhere else, really. So it's a Whisky Meats exclusive cask. We do single cask as our main production, so it's not unusual for us to do this, but this one is all exclusive to you guys. But yeah, so a bit of berry in there, a bit of sort of red fruits. Nice sweetness in there as well, coming through with your bourbon. And yeah, it's just nice light Annandale character. So we've got very much an orchard fruity sort of apple base in our main sort of spirit production. Even in our peated side, it's quite smoky, but there's still apple notes. But with this one, it's just all those fruits come through.
Yeah, even with you get those beautiful kind of dominant creamy vanilla kind of classic bourbon notes on it, but those orchid fruit notes are incredible. It really kind of pops as all that kind of green apple, green pear. I've got a couple of people mention that in the comment as well. Oh, there you go. There's the comment we were talking about before. Phil, do you know when this is going to be on the shop website? I've been briefed. It's all fine. Next week at some point, for those of you that really want this and really want to get hold of the bottle, an email will be sent out to you all probably to ensure that you can get your hands on the last sort of bit of this stock. So yeah, next week at some point, so you don't have to worry about that. Enjoy what's in the glass now. Make sure you definitely want it.
It's actually it's a really good dram. I'm glad I sort of managed to sort of push this.
It's really tasty.
Yeah. But one of my colleagues always says we're inconsistently consistent. You know, we're all of our slight changes from the single cask, every cask being unique. You get so much variance going from one to the next one, but you get a general sort of, you know what you're looking at, but it's going to be different each time. So we're consistently able to get good products that are inconsistent in flavor, small changes, but it's still good quality. And we love to just sort of look at the casks, check them regularly. The sampling is fantastic. But then it's sort of just earmark ones which are close, give it a few months, give it a couple of years, or just leave it. You know, don't go near it again for sort of 5 to 10 years. So we've got quite a nice tasting program, let's say, to go through all the casks.
Without doubt. I noticed in the back room a minute ago, John, you were talking to Rob, who we have from the Cotswolds, to talk to you guys in a couple of minutes. And obviously, STR is such a unique, useful, modern variation of a cask. It's quite fantastic in every single way. And you were mentioning that yours have like quite large inconsistencies, not in a bad way. All casks, you know, is the one thing we can't really control. What a cask will do to spirit, it's very difficult to try and control that. It just does what it does. But what kind of, like, it's an odd question. What vast inconsistencies do you guys have? But you have peated spirit, unpeated spirit. You've got an extremely fruit-driven spirit as well, even with peat in some ones. What kind of, you know, if you've got, I always say to people, you can make 2 barrels from the same tree, fill them on the same day, put them in side by side in the same warehouse, and they will just taste different. It's just
exactly.
It's just the way it is. We can't do much about that. Have there been any sort of standout barrels that you've tried where you've gone, this shouldn't taste like that, or I wasn't expecting this? Because we all know what a sherry cask should taste like, and a bourbon cask and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I'd say we would get most variance in our peated side on sort of what to expect and what you don't sort of get. You don't get what you expect. We tried some sherries 2 weeks ago, Oloroso sherry, about 6-7 years old, and you're looking at the variance going from heavy peat to the point of us going, is there actually peat in this one? It doesn't taste at all of any sort of peat. There's a bit of grassiness as opposed to smoky or sort of that mossiness that comes through. And then it was just jam flavors, or you can just get some completely single cask as well in sherry. We get a lot more of the woodiness coming through. So it's not as if you can imagine, the bourbon note isn't there as a base, but you still get that woody character influencing with the sweetness coming through and the spiciness. And then it's just all also sherry punch in the face, which some people love, some people not a big fan of. But that's why we get to do other casks. It's all about find one you like, try it, and then love it while it lasts.
Yeah, there's the beauty of those things. I think anytime we get anyone here talking about single casks in a distillery that is focusing on single casks in all of the right ways, you know, having inconsistent consistency is a brilliant thing, because you're just going to find just an ace sat somewhere where, like, we just have to release that. It's got to go out now. Amazing comment from Liz that says she thinks this whiskey would go particularly well with coffee and walnut cake. It's pretty light. It's pretty citrusy. It's got those nice toppy notes to it. I can see that.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
She's also added a little bit of water, tamed a little bit of the spice. It is 52.5%. If this is your first whiskey of the night, it's going to seem a little bigger. So a little bit of water to temper that, bring out some sweet notes. Annoyingly, I literally ran into the house before we started this, so I have nothing around me apart from a glass. So I'm just neat tonight. And yeah, developing vanilla, a little bit of banana, a little bit caramelized. I can see where you're all coming from with that. I think because of the youthfulness of it, it still has like not the all new mixed spirit can be like earthy and like a bit vegetal, but it has that greenness still kind of pushing through. Carmen's breaking out some dark chocolate with this one, but that's a fabulous pairing, to be fair. Before we finish for the first bit, John, and bring Robin from the Cotswolds, and then we'll bring you both together at the end. We mentioned it in sort of the backstage, but you just wanted to briefly touch on Jim Swan.
Yeah, so
he has with sort of yourself and the distillery.
It was a fantastic sort of person in whiskey, the Einstein of whiskey. And you mentioned STRs before, and that was his brainchild. So he worked on the whole method of rejuvenating a cask, especially wine casks. If you don't rejuvenate it and sort of scrape it and rechar it properly, you get too much wine bleed. It goes bright red, tannic, doesn't work. His process of doing it all properly gives you sort of the influence of the cask coming through again, and all your fruity. Jam is one of those. Most of the STRs we've got coming through, it's like a nice jam, sweetiness, fruity strawberries coming in. But again, it's all down to him. When we first started off on our journey, our owner, David Thompson, had met Jim a few times at different sort of flavour meetings and sort of conferences, and said, I'll give him a ring just to sort of help us start off. And literally it was, yep, I'll come up and see you. We'll run through what you want and let's get started. So this was before even the groundwork had been properly committed to. So David just gave a list of what he wanted, a nice light, fruity, not too punchy, but can be drank at cask strength. Jim said, okay, you want this. This is the equipment you need to buy from these guys. I'll design your full setup. So he did it from scratch. And yeah, I think my favourite story I've got of him, the boys have been in production, changed the yeast and got a small increase of about 10%, which is quite a big jump in sort of money back. Jim came in to visit, just tried the new make and went, pull me off another sample. And the boys went, oh, okay. Tried it. You've lost it. Something's happened. Is it your fermentation time or is it your yeast? And the guys just went, oh, we changed our yeast from what you told us to use to this one. We're getting more to change it back. You've lost your character. And that was him just walking in on a random day, sampled 2 samples and went, you've done something and it's the fermentation. These are your 2 problems it's going to be. And that was him. And the boys just went, yes, sir. And that was it. Never changed it ever again.
Wow. Man is like the encyclopedia of distillation.
Yeah.
I mean, that's incredible. So a question I actually forgot to ask. Your guy's founder, David Thompson, he's listed as professor. What is he a professor of?
Flavor chemistry. So his original, before he came into sort of buying a distillery and many historical buildings, he owns a company called MMR with his wife Teresa Church, and that's mathematical market research. And they do from Heinz beans through some of Diageo products to Coca-Cola. They do market research for them, very much focusing on sort of the flavor profile, how it works, as well as the marketing behind it also. Yeah, very interesting.
I was going to say, what an interesting man, and to have known Jim Swan, who himself, obviously, I mean, there are many people in whiskey whose reputation precedes them, but, you mention his name and it's almost like being in a church, everyone goes silent almost.
Yeah.
Moments of respect for what he's done around the world for whiskey is quite incredible. A couple of other comments too. Although on the strong side, haven't needed water with this. It's a lovely warming feeling. It's like keeping the chills away on a damp night. 100%. I'm experiencing that right now. Couple of people, the distillery is well worth a visit. We've got Henry here. He visited it when it first opened, however many years ago? 11 years ago? Oh, no.
10, yeah. 10. 11 in November. So, yeah.
Yes. Oh, it's coming up on a big day. We did, we had the Glasgow distillery on last month, sorry. And it was like, oh, we've got 10-year-old spirit now. And I'm like, where's that time gone? Like, all of you guys have now got like 10-year-old spirit. Like, seeing an Arden Merkin 10-year-old kind of freaked me out the other day. I was like, oh, what's happened in 10 years? It's really fun to see it all coming through, but it's also like,
yeah, there's a lot of sort of as you say, it's that turn of age just now. And I think our first, I think we've had 3 releases, and they've all just went bam with the 10-year-old. So I'll give you a quick sneak peek, not being fully released yet. In about a month, we'll have maybe a couple more coming out, 10-year-olds. So hopefully an unpeated and a peated one end of March.
Incredible. Just in time for that, when everyone's bank accounts feel a bit more stable again after January.
Recovered from Christmas.
Thank you so much, John. We'll obviously bring you back at the end for like a little one-on-one with myself and Rob. But thank you so much for talking us through that incredible history, brilliant stories too, and we'll see you again in about 15 minutes. There we go. And in comes the man from the Cotswolds, probably the most famous beard in whiskey. I think I can say that quite comfortably, which is always quite nice. And yeah, we're all getting older, as a comment says there. That wasn't timed for your introduction, Rob. That was just whiskey's getting older and we don't realize it until
right. Okay, I believe you.
10-year-old whiskies on the shelf from distilleries that you still think of as sort of new kids on the block.
Yeah, we're staring down the barrel of 11-year-old stock.
Yeah, so let me break down those facts and figures for the folks tuning in as well. Now, I actually wrote this down in my little notebook here because I think I found out a couple of weeks ago that it was going to be yourself and John from Annandale. And I was just like, is it possible to actually talk about English whiskey without talking about you guys? I think it's almost like it's like trying to discuss the history of a particular country without talking about like a focal point or a war or something. It's like an ingrained cornerstone of English whiskey. So much like Annandale, you guys have a Jim Swan connection. You were both founded in 2014. You both produce about 500,000 litres of whiskey a year. That's come through a couple of different expansions and huge projects to expand the distillery. 2014, started out with gin production, as many people do. And then the release of your first single malt, The Odyssey, in 2017, if my dates are correct. I remember the chaos of that release with being working in retail as that went on shelves. An incredible focus on ex-bourbon and STR barrels. Yeah. As like a base foundation. And then some other things I found out, which you can feel free to talk or not talk about. I feel very Louis Theroux when I say stuff like that. But 2018, you guys experimented with rye distillation experiments and trial rum production.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
How much do you want to talk about that?
We can swim back around to that in a bit, I'm sure. If
I'm here for it, Phil. I'm here for it.
I'm a big fan of rye, big fan of rum. So when I found that, I was like, ooh, that's some interesting stuff. And then again, outside of your guys' core range, you've got like STR-focused cask strength releases. Is it peated quarter cask releases as well with some of the releases as well? So
correct.
You guys have in almost like a Ben Riach, Rachel Barry fashion, loads of fun barrels, loads of different things happening everywhere. But hopefully everyone now has this. This is the Cotswolds signature. And Rob, I will hand over to you to talk about this as a cornerstone of English whiskey.
Cheers, Phil. So Cotswolds signature whiskey, part of our core range, the first whiskey that we ever released. I was actually very, very privileged to bottle the first ever batch. So whenever anyone asks what's my favorite whiskey, I always say signature, which is what we're having this evening, just based on the fact that I bottled the first ever batch. I have traveled around the world with it time and time again, and it's always been a complete crowd pleaser, no matter what market I'm in, which is such a pleasure. The composition is 70% red wine STR, 30% first fill bourbon. Everything that we do is aged full term. So if we think of the composition in a 10 cask tranche, 7 barrels of STR, 3 barrels of bourbon, all aged full term. And then 12 weeks before bottling, we will disgorge all 10 casks into a tank, proof it down from roughly about 62, 63 to 50%. And then we will put it back into 10 casks plus an extra 2 or 3 because of the excess liquid. And we'll actually allow them to marry together as a singular liquid in cask for 3 months or 12 weeks before bottling at 46% ABV, non-chill filtered, all natural color. And the other thing as well is every single grain of barley used by the Cotswolds is from one independent farm half an hour down the road. So we really are Cotswolds in barley, Cotswolds in production, maturation, bottling. It really is 100% a culmination of our region in a bottle.
Wow. I had no idea you guys were marrying stock after the initial vatting back into barrels. I can't think of anyone else who does that.
Yeah, so it was a cognac thing. So our owner Dan, he's very much he lived in France for 15 years, and he actually got this as advice from, I'm going to get you a name because I can never remember it, Hubert Jamon Robin, which he was a cognac distiller. And he said he came and helped Dan out and said, listen, this is a really great way to bring together water and two types of spirit organically, slowly, that will soften the edges of absolutely everything.
Yeah, that's quite an incredible technique. I think whiskey in general can learn a lot from cognac production and even brandy production with like demijohns and taking stuff out to like just let it sit for a bit. I think that's an incredible way to blend spirits. Certainly something I think cognac producers need to talk about more. But
Hugely.
I know,
bringing together spirit, bringing together casks, and most importantly, bringing together water. It's a big thing.
Yeah, without a doubt.
You can't just crash them together and hope that it works.
Yeah, when I learned about, I thought I kind of knew about it anyway, but it's only when you think about, you talk about in a tasting or when you're putting whiskies together, people go, yeah, we grab this cask, we get that cask, we put it all together, and then, it's bottled in oven many times, and people forget about that marrying section. It's kind of skipped over a little bit, but you do need to let the stuff just sit like you would like a big plate, like a big bowl of stew. Just let it all marry, let it do its thing.
The food analogy is spot on, Phil. I use the analogy of lasagna. If you create a lasagna and doing layers of your ragu and your mash and your lasagna sheets, and you bake it, if you take it out of the oven, portion it and put it on a plate, it slides everywhere and there's just no cohesiveness. But if you let it sit overnight together, then you have this singular entity and something that has come together flavor-wise perfectly. And it's the same with whiskey. Whenever you're combining different components, just let them sit and get to know each other.
Whiskey lasagna. I feel like that's a book you could probably write at some point and catapult you into the stratosphere of like food and drink writing. That could be quite good.
Maybe a leaflet, not a book, but I'll write it.
Yeah, anything can be extended. Let's jump into some of these comments here. So people are really getting the wine. Obviously, that's what you guys are famous for with these STR barrels.
Yeah.
Sucks for red wine casks everywhere. Some people are getting the bourbon too. Obviously, it's an important part of it without a doubt. Honey and almonds. Yeah, I kind of get the honey and almond thing. Cherries on the nose. The palate's great, a little sweet. Then you get the bourbon spice at the end. And obviously what you mentioned about literal grain to glass. Fantastic for like the local area, as Conan's rightly mentioned there as well. Whilst people kind of ruminate on this whiskey, talk to me about your rum. I know this is a whiskey thing, but like, are we talking, is it like pot stilly Jamaican rum, or we got some kind of other stuff going on? Apologies, folks. I've been reading like for months about rum, and it's made me remarkably like excited to everything I can.
Okay, so we are flavor. We are always in search of big flavors. That's just what we are and who we are. You ever tried our gin? It's a huge gin. Even our whiskeys, they're always big flavors. So we decided that we were going to play around with making some rum, and we decided that we would use Tate and Lyle Treacle No. 3 as our raw ingredient.
Glasgow classic. Yeah.
Well, East London classic.
Well, yeah, true.
So we actually bought 300 kilogram tubs, and we were lining them with heat jackets to make it malleable. And this is through using our old distillery. I mean, what a place to be where you've got a surplus distillery. But we wanted to make something that was a high ester Jamaican style rum. So by making this molasses malleable, we were able to pump it into what was our mash tun, add a couple of thousand liters of water so that it became, syrupy and fermentable and a bit more liquid-like. Then we used dried South African yeast, dunder, and muck that we cultivated in-house ourselves through skimmings and whatnot. And we did a 2-week fermentation. We even had Vivian Wisdom from Hampden Estate fly over and sort of help us with production, just to tweak a few. Yeah, he loved it. He what a wonderful man as well. Like really lovely dude. And then it goes through the double pot distillation. So obviously it goes through our 4-side stills, and then we have been aging them in second fill STR, second fill bourbon, second fill sherry, because we want the spirit to shine. So we don't want any first fill. And then we even filled a few random ones, such as a Van Jeune cask. If you've ever had that oxidized Southern French style of wine,
Never
very
came across
funky, very weird. So yeah, we've got a Van Jeune cask sitting with high ester Cotswolds rum made from Tate and Lyle treacle number 3.
I mean, where do I go? How do I get it? How can I siphon it?
140. We've got 140 casks aging as we speak, and I don't think it will see a shelf until late next year.
Okay, I'll bookmark 2026. That's fine. Yeah, fantastic way to go. What a recipe! Yeah, no, what a recipe. That's an incredible little story. Briefly getting back to the whiskey, some food pairing ideas. We had dark chocolate mentioned with the Annandale. Perfect pairing.
I love that food pairing, by the way. It's great.
Yeah, so Liz has got a pretty good one here. She thinks this would pair with something particularly salty, like salted peanuts, salted dark chocolate. You do have a lot of richness in this whiskey. It's got so it's incredibly. I mean, John mentioned it before with like jam notes, but this thing is like just layered with like blackberry jam. It's all these kind of bramble fruits and all this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, we always go for big flavors. So the spirit really is the conduit of everything that we create. So we've just upscaled to a new distillery that allows us to make 500,000 liters a year. We're not there yet. We're making 200,000 liters this year, but it is about 2 waters on the grain. So when we're mashing, we only use 2 waters, not 3. So we're able to retain quite a lot of sugar. That allows for a really efficient, good fermentation on 2 yeast strains, which is very classic Jim Swan. Small, tight cut points on your spirit. So 75 in. So 7-minute heads, 75 in, cut out at 69, which gives us about 1,100 liters, and then recycling head and tails back in the wash. And it really is just a thick, syrupy apples and pears, but also like grapefruit chocolate sort of new make. It's really, really great. But the great thing about the spirit is it lends itself to different casks. I mean, bourbon and STR are 70% of what we fill. We also have ex-peated casks. We have various types of sherry. And then the last 10% is always exotics. So Piña de Charon, rum, Banyuls, Sauterne, Calvados, Madeira, Sake, Vermouth, Tokai, Bum de Venise. The list goes on and on and on. So we've got quite a big tranche of experimental casks, but our main focus is bourbon, STR, and sherry with a bit of peated.
I mean, that's quite a list for your 10% of exotics. That's particularly incredible to hear all those things kicking around. I do have one comment from the chat for you, Rob, and it relates back to the rum, but Peter asks, I should say, how do you make the rum muck?
Okay, that was down to our distiller at the time, Leon, who was the biggest rum nerd I've ever met in my life. He's a great friend of mine. I'm not going to bastardize his process or what he did in making that. It's not that I'm diverting that question. I just don't think I can give it. I don't think I can answer that effectively. Leon did it. He did it well. But I can't tell you. In all honesty, I can't tell you.
That's okay. We can't always answer every question, but it is a good question nonetheless, Peter. Thank you very much for sending that in. But yeah, I mean, what a brief 15 minutes flies when you get that kind of information, doesn't it? From both yourself and John. That's an incredible
thing for hours.
No, I can see. Yeah, like next time you're in Manchester, I need to meet up with you and we can just like chat
100%.
everything about spirits. But I think as we're hitting that kind of 30-minute mark, we should be able to bring John back in and we can kind of have the two of you here and we can kind of bounce some ideas, get some nerdy facts from the two of you guys. Something that I did last month with Glasgow and Royal Oak Distillery was just talking about like what kind of spirit and how you guys are like focusing on spirits. And Rob, you've just given us like some pretty key kind of cut points of 7 minutes on the heads, taking off at 75 and 69, all that kind of thing. With yourself, John, is it like a similar, because you both got that Swan influence, is it like similar cut points?
Very similar, yeah.
Oh, really similar?
So Jim liked to keep it sort of clean, especially sort of lighter, fruitier. And then on our peated side, there's a bit more of a delve into sort of your tails, but it's not too much further. But it's been an extra 7-minute difference. just at the end. So Jim knew what he was doing, and very much had a core. He knew what your yeast would give you, and when you're distilling, he sort of knew when you should cut it just to get the most out of it. So yeah, very similar timings actually and temps.
Yeah, his method of going with long fermentation. So I mean, we do 4 days. I'm pretty sure that John, you do something quite similar.
I think 68 is our normal week, and then our longest
like
would
be 3 days. Yeah. So that long fermentation with a high clean cut point means that with fresh active casks such as STR, it would allow for the not the illusion, but it would give flavor profiles that would be akin to something that would be aged a lot longer. And that was something that he was able to develop alongside Cavalan as well, with those hot climates and aggressive angel shares, so that you really could have something very, very high performing with great texture, quality, and balance at a very young age. And it's not cheating. It's just doing something that is just of the highest integrity, so that you don't need years and years to flash off any impurities.
Yeah, I think with the STR thing, it's been a cask which has been welcomed by so many people in the best way possible. I think anyone who views it as cheating, it's just a really fun thing to do.
No, not at all. And they're great casks. I mean, we only get them from one supplier, so we sort of stay straight down the line with that. We use J. Diaz, who was the original cooper who Jim worked with to develop the cask. But we're now leaning into 8, 9, 10-year-old stock of STR. And the biggest problem that we thought we were going to have was that they would over extract and they would just be like pure red wine and wood. It's far from it. You get to 5 years old and they just start oxidizing and turning into these even more elegant, really beautiful, nuanced styles of whiskies. It's an exciting cask.
Yeah, no, definitely I agree on that side. So we are 7-year-olds, I think it is. Between 5 and 7 is when the changes in flavour come. And then sort of looking further, problem is we got them and they all tasted very good. We only put down, I think it was 40 casks our first run, our first year of SDRs. And then it was about 15 casks. So we are now in a sort of deficit waiting for the next, when we put out 80 casks a year of SDRs, just because they perform so well. But it's fantastic. And yeah, I agree completely on the flavour just jumps out of them and doesn't go too winey, which in a bad way, I'm trying to say that's like you can sort of have a negative side if it becomes acidic or it becomes just too far. No, they just don't go there.
That's a great point. I'd certainly have a question about that to bring back to you, John, in a second. But Rob, I've got a question for you in the comments from Conan. Being stuck in the middle of England with not many distilleries, how do you manage your casks in like a coopering approach to it? Do you have like someone you bring in, outsource that sort?
So we don't have to worry about it too much because we go direct to source and everything is first fill. So with regards to that, we haven't had to do much with regards to reconditioning or repairing casks, in all honesty. So there is one cooper in England. We've never had to call on their services. Oh, wow. We go straight to Basil Hayden's for our bourbons. We go straight to Diaz for our STRs. We go straight to Miguel Martin for his sherry casks, which means that, like, touch MDF, we don't have that need for an on-site cooperage. I mean, there are 55 other English whiskey distilleries, but no, we've never had to have anyone come down. And I mean, you know, you get a leaker every now and again, but other than that, I mean, 7,500 casks, we're talking maybe 8 or 9 that have been, you know, faulty or leaky. So that's pretty good percentages for us.
That's quite incredible. When you do find that leaky one, are you just like plugging it with, is it small leaks? Is it big leaks? Is it just?
There are kind of those that sort of like crystallize down the side of the cask. So they're not waterfalls. They're just kind of like slow burn type things. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, you just take it off, re-rack, hope for the best.
Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah, Conan did say like his question was regarding like repairs and stuff. But I'm like, if you guys to have that kind of consistency with like A1 grade casks, that's particularly impressive.
Yeah, like I said, direct to source, everything first fill. So we try and mitigate that just through buying as best we can first thing.
That is where it is. Casks are always key. along with many other things, but they're obviously very important. And then, John, coming back to the wine thing. So I had a discussion with a customer the other day about wine barrels, and I actually didn't have an answer for this. Now, whiskey fan, love rum, tequila, mezcal. If it's a spirit, I'm interested, always there. Wine is something I've only got into recently. Started off on white because it was just like crisp and fresh and sweet and easygoing. And I've dived into red quite quickly. I don't realize how much of like a train with no brakes getting into red wine is, because it's just like, try this, try that, try this, try that. And you end up spending a fortune in a restaurant. But when it comes to the stuff that you guys have got, I know briefly you mentioned you had some like Chateau Margaux, Chateau Neuf de Pape, all this kind of thing. A big question this customer had for me was that, well, I can taste the difference between an Oloroso sherry and a Pedro Jimenez sherry and a Manzanilla sherry and all that kind of thing. And obviously they're dealing with significantly different sugar contents and oxidization with the liquid that's in them prior, possibly even different wood types, whether it be European or American. But with the stock you guys have, and to you as well, Rob, with the wine casks you've got, can you actually, when you're nosing these things and it says Neuf de Pape or Margaux, are you getting those still kind of winey notes from it? I mean, we've talked about jam flavor profile with these, but can you pick up some of those nuances of like these very sort of sought after red wine styles?
Well, I can say there is a difference, going through them cask by cask, but then I don't know, and I've oddly not had the purse strings to buy many Chateau Neuf de Papes or Chateau Margaux to try them against each other. I'd love to do it. If anyone wants to sponsor me, I'll happily drink a couple bottles. But I think I don't know, comparing to if it's the cask that's doing the difference or if it's the wine that was previous in that's doing the difference necessarily yet. Maybe one day I'll be able to identify them.
Do you want me to jump
yeah,
in?
If you got any thoughts on that as well, Rob, feel free to jump in.
Yeah, so for my sins, I studied as a sommelier before I got into whiskey. So wine was my life for about a decade. When it comes to wine casks with whiskey, it's always a very, very difficult thing because not live red, but like the lining of a wine cask will always have an element of the residual wine, which will have amino acids. They can react inconsistently with a spirit, which can sometimes sulfur, sometimes not. So that's why wine casks historically have matched very, very good. And John, I'm sure you can attest to this. It's very, very great with peated spirit, and especially if you're doing finishing or, a shorter term aging with peated spirit, because that robust style of spirit, especially peated, works phenomenally well. I mean, see Kilkerran, see Ledyard, see a lot of West Coast distilleries with regards to wine casks. Being able to tell wine types back into the spirit, I would say it's very, very difficult, simply based on the fact that all of the nuanced developments of what wine can offer from a cask are completely abolished by what would be 63.5% spirit. So I'm sure over a longer term aging or something that is very specific to a specific vineyard, maybe, but wine within whiskey, it's not a proven track record. The STR cask exists because Jim Swan saw that there was a glut and an abundance of used red wine casks in the market without a home to go to because of their inconsistency. And he saw a process in STR that allowed for a short-term, quick process that would allow wine casks to have relevance and consistency for young distilleries.
Wow. Well, that's the infant. I'll ring him up tomorrow and make sure I recall you've both given to me. He literally left me an email address and a phone number because he wanted to know the answers.
Send it my way, man. I'm ready.
Yeah, absolutely. But we did feedback similar knowledge to him, and we've got the guys who work in the shop with us. They've got incredible palates and knowledge for loads of other things, and they didn't necessarily mention amino acids and stuff, but they're like, wine in itself, it's such a low alcohol in comparison to whiskey, and I imagine the red lines within the casks probably aren't as deep as when it comes to like.
Well, one of the other things with the wine cask is it's seasoned to such a high quality because of the quality of the liquid that's going to go in there, as opposed to a bourbon cask, that the quality of the wood is incredible. It's just the inconsistency due to those amino acids. So wine casks are amazing as long as you make sure that you've got the right treatment for what's going to happen with regards to maturation.
Okay, fair. We'll definitely feed that email back to him tomorrow. I'll include your email address at the bottom of it, Rob. So if you get any unusual emails tomorrow in your spam folder from a particularly a man demanding significant detail. I apologize for that in advance.
I'm ready.
But yeah, I think, what a wonderful comparison of spirits and styles. You guys have obviously got so many links that I was unaware of until about 6 hours ago doing a bit of research for this. And then we've also got like incredible feedback on this side. The comments are just awash with food pairings. So I've got people are trying to compare this the Cotswold stuff with fresh brownies and Toblerones and all kinds of interesting things. It's by all means, people, if you can find Rob's email address, probably on his Instagram, or even like find him on Instagram, I'm sure he will appreciate any sort of food pairings you have.
Yeah, at the Cotswolds, Rob, go to town. I'm ready.
Yeah, worked really well with Marmite Greys.
Yo,
interesting.
Right. Bit of umami. I love it.
Corny, salty things, yeah. And then, this jammy incredibleness from the Cotswolds with that amazing base and this super lively, fruity spirit from Annandale, which is even in like a 5-year-old bourbon cask as a single, 52.5%. Drinks like there's the kind of refreshing thing you need on like a summer's day or like a Mediterranean holiday or something. It's just got those big, green, grassy, fruity like aromas to it, like particularly incredible. Something's happening down there. Let me turn that off. Oh, we've got new comments. Sorry. Apparently the Cotswolds with fresh brownies out the oven. That's a winner. Rob, John, and Phil, thank you for another amazing tasting. Thank you all for tuning in. It's our pleasure, really. And somehow like that, we're 45 minutes in.
Amazing.
Time flies when it gets to all this. But thank you everyone for tuning in and watching this, and everyone else who watch it later on YouTube or Facebook. Thank you to John. Thank you to Rob. Incredible wealths of information from the two of you. Thank you for joining us on what I think nationwide is this particularly miserable Tuesday evening, bringing quite a bit of light and knowledge into people's lives. But yes, I will leave you all to your evening now. And my glass is empty, which is always a good sign. But thank you to the two of you, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. And we'll see you again next month with some other very fun whiskies.
Cheers.
Cheers to you all. Thank you.
See you guys.